an ambition that is here, but an infrastructure and a capability to deliver which is there, and we're never going to reconcile the two. So certainly for the electricity companies and the gas companies, they didn't get the funding that they wanted to be able to deliver on their decarbonisation objectives. And so given this is currently happening in the water companies as well, it's just a stark reminder that we should be saying that we support these organisations in actually delivering on their decarbonisation objectives. And yes, it hurts the customer a little bit on their bill, but spread that out across all customers in the area, and it makes a very significant difference to the capability that they've got.
Okay, thank you very much. Helpful. Was there anyone further on this, Andy?
Yeah, I was just wondering whether the calculations of the consequences of not investing in the infrastructure are there to make the stronger argument. You know, if you don't invest now, what is the consequence, you know, in 5 and 10 years' time as a result of that?
Sounds like we don't have those, but it's something we can consider. I think some of it is you know, evident in terms of there's certainly already limitations on things like business growth from capacity in the grid and those various things that, you know, businesses are coming to me all the time with my other hat on to talk about. So perhaps something we can feed in. Anything further on this? Otherwise, take those points away. The only recommendations around this are to note the progress and to, if there are any further actions other than to kind of note the comments that have been made and continue. And anyone wants to flag? No. Okay, there's no point voting on it now, is there? In that respect, because we've not caught it anyway. So we will move on. Right, so we move on to the next part of the agenda, which is Joint Working Devolution Programme next steps. So we're going to particularly focus on the kind of joint working and the content of the report in this part of the meeting. And then what we'll do following the close of this public part of the meeting, we'll have a wider opportunity for people to air thoughts and views on wider progress. But if we can concentrate on this specific report for this public conversation, that would be really helpful. Have we got a presentation on this as well? Yeah, Adrian?
Thanks, Ben, and Noel will be delighted. There's no slides to grapple with on this one, just me making kind of 3 broad points by way of introduction to the report, if I may. So with that point you made earlier, Ben, in mind that we haven't discussed this in public since June as an EPC, very conscious that we've talked about devolution in councils, in conferences, in public, and a lot of other forums, however, over the last 6 months. Let me try and touch a little bit on an overview of progress since June, look a little around the specific issue that relates to the team and the joint work that we've been investing in, and then I'll thirdly kind of briefly look forward to what's coming next. So the report gives you quite a comprehensive overview of the progress that we've made. When we were sat there in June, we didn't know that we were about to get a phone call inviting us to do a truncated and then a truncated accelerated deal negotiation. But within a matter of weeks, we had a draft deal that I think you all know has subsequently been signed off by government and launched. And paragraphs 11 and 12 set out the broad parameters of that deal, including the scores on the doors when it comes to the amount of money that we were successful in baking into that first deal. There's quite a lot of work, therefore, that's been undertaken, not only in developing the business case for devolution, drawing on all of those thematic groups that Kath referred to earlier, securing the deal and then developing the comprehensive deal proposal that we launched for consultation back in November, and a consultation which then closed on the 9th of January this year. And of course, subject to the outcome, work now is well underway to plan for transition towards a shadow authority. I think we feel confident that we've secured a good deal with government and that all partners have recognised the level of underfunding in the region, but that has been in many respects reflected in the size of the package of funding that we were able to secure. Really important as well to recognise that that doesn't just talk about money, but it lays the foundations for both powers to be brought down from Westminster and Whitehall down into the region, and that should give us much greater flexibility over the way that we use that funding and the way we work together. But of course, it also builds on that joint working that we've been investing in, particularly in Nottingham and Nottinghamshire over the last couple of years. And I think throughout Kath's presentation on the previous item, you could see that all of this is acting as a kind of galvanizing force or a catalyst for greater joint working. So we've made a lot of progress over the last 6 months or so since we last met in public. But of course, the second point I wanted to reflect on is the support that we've had from partners across the district and boroughs and the City Council, of course, as well as our partners over in Derby and Derbyshire. The support we've had from the LEP and other agencies like the Net Zero Hub, but of course the invaluable support that we've had from the programme team that you decided to invest in just over a year ago. Of course, I think members of the EPC first showed great courage to create a business rates pool a number of years ago and create a joint fund that would allow us to invest in economic development related activities. And of course, you then very much put your money where your mouth is just over a year ago when you allocated £450,000 from the surplus of that business rates pool to invest in joint working and laying the foundations for devolution. So the report sets out how that money has been used over the last year, both in terms of the 7 officers that were appointed and have been working tirelessly, particularly over that summer period and the frenetic deal-making period. But of course, the external support that we've used that resource to buy, particularly from, say, legal colleagues or from Mori around the independent work that was done on the consultation. So for the £38,000 of business rates that each of our districts agreed to forego through that joint pool, as Kath referred to earlier, each district will receive around about £530,000 of the retrofit money. I think that works at 14 to 1. So if I can find a bank that will offer me a return on investment at that level, you may never see me again. But of course, we absolutely recognise that times are tough. We've all got difficult budget settlements at the moment. So chief execs have worked over the last 2 or 3 months to very carefully scrutinise the plans for the next period of the work and to look at other options and alternatives. And I think have reached a point where chief execs have supported a further allocation of £450,000 from the surplus of the business rates pool to fund the team for another year. Important to stress that it is for another year because by April 2024 we'll be in the glide path to setting up the combined authority, subject to successful passage of all the necessary legislation and approvals locally. And of course, that's where we'll be into the real detail of how we fund our combined authority and how we set up and invest in the combined authority for its longer term. But nonetheless, both colleagues in the city, Derby City and Derbyshire too, are having these debates to make sure that through a mixture of cash and in-kind contributions, we've got what we need to be able to deliver the programme of work over the next year or so. So to look briefly at what that forward programme might look like, the report sets out the various phases we expect to go through from a transitional period, which I think ostensibly we're in, which is where we're kind of laying the foundations to create an operating model, to create a shadow combined authority, to create all of the kind of architecture, the legal and financial and democratic structures that will be required, hoping to move then into a shadow authority upon the Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill receiving royal assent sometime towards the summer, and then that shadow authority to be able to start to act on behalf of the partners and with the partners, to practice and to, again, have all of the necessary plans in place so that upon the appointment of the mayor, we don't lose any time and we can move straight into delivery. So there's a huge amount of work to do. I won't bore you with all of the intricate details of that, but I did bore the chief execs with all the intricate details of that recently. And I think we all acknowledge that this is very much the right thing to do. It matches the ambition and the leadership that you as leaders have shown to get us to this point. And so the report proposes that we continue to work together and to invest in that next phase of work. I do just want one brief final point would be to reference that joint working and that collaboration and the opportunities that we've got to grow that. It's referenced in the report. We're inviting leaders and colleagues who are in the room today to flag where they would see priorities for that joint working. But really, I think the task will fall with us as your chief execs and senior officers to kind of draw up that joint working programme, which sits in and around the core of the devolution programme going forward. So with that, I'll hand back to you.
Thank you very much. Run through many millions of hours of work and conversation about all of this, and that additional capacity, which seems very dehumanising. Sorry, it's been really, really important over the last 12 months, and clearly the workload is not going to dissipate any. If anything, more so over the coming months as we transition into that shadow authority kind of proper into the autumn. So agree that it's something we need to do from that point of view if we're going to deliver on the things we've talked about. Has anybody got any thoughts or comments on the report? Anything they want to raise? As I say, this is the kind of public discussion part, and then we can get into any more afterwards. But if nobody's got anything to flag, then we'll have a look at the recommendation. So it's to endorse the progress, and again, I don't know if there's any point voting on this even though, but approve delegation. So I think in reality, as the report lays out, we delegated this formal decision to chief executive officers about 18 months or so ago. The report asks us effectively to endorse that, but given that it's not a formal meeting and it doesn't count anyway if we do vote, I'll just ask if anyone has any objection to that at this stage, and then if anybody questions it later, I'll look back at the video, call you out. Okay, great. In that case, we will move on. I think the final thing is just to agree dates of future meetings. So they're listed there on the agenda. I know it can be a challenge. I'm more than happy as we go forward to continue to look at what is on said agenda, and if it turns out it's not a valuable use of time, then we can consider as we get there, as we have done over recent months, because we've been through periods of time where we've met very, very regularly outside of this forum anyway, so we can play that by ear. But has anyone got any concerns about those future dates? The other thing I just wanted to flag in that realm, I suppose, of future meetings is, and not for answering now, but to take away, I think historically I would have reached the end of a 2-year term chairing it and it would hand over to David. So I don't know whether David wants to do it or not, but we should probably ask that question of the city as well. Okay, anything further on that? No? Apologies from Councillor Clark. Teams link doesn't appear to work. All right, no worries. We've managed Mike without him. Don't panic. Sajida's got a hand up. Sajida.
I'll take that away, Ben, that last point with David. When, and I can follow up with you, Adrian, is there a specific date when your term comes to an end? Was it March?
Well, I wasn't here before the May, so I would have taken over
so presumably
May, June.
Okay.
But whatever David's comfortable with. Or if you don't want to do it, I would do it. Whatever. Yeah.
I'll pick that up with him and we'll come back to you.
All right. Thanks, Sajida.
Thanks. Cheers, Ben.
Right then, in the absence of any other thoughts and comments, I'll close the public part of the meeting. Thank you very much. And shut the